Okay, well, we're gonna stop it and we'll start.
Today's date is April 7th, 2022. My name is Lexi Fields. I am a 7th grade student at Temple Shalom Religious School in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'll be interviewing my Bubby, whose name is Gloria Fields. This interview is being recorded for the Oral History Archives of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Good morning, Bubby.
Good
Okay,
morning.
let's start with telling me your full name.
My full name is Gloria Sandroff Fields.
Very nice. Who were you named after, if you know?
I was named after my Bubby, actually my great Bubby, Gutta Leah. So the Gutta is Gloria and the Leah is Elaine. So that was my middle name when I was born.
Beautiful. When and where were you born?
I was born in Boston in a hospital there, and Women's and Children's Hospital it was called. Now I think they've changed the name to Women's and Brigham's, but yeah.
Where did you grow up and who lived with you growing up?
I grew up in Gardner, Massachusetts, and I lived with my mother and father and my little sister. And I lived there a long time.
Do you know where your family was from?
I do. My mother was born in Poland, Grodno, in Poland, and she came here when she was 9. And my father came when he was 1 year old, and he was from Russia, from Minsk in Russia.
Do you know anything about your ancestors' immigration to the United States?
I know a lot. So how many hours would you like me to talk? My mother had a lot of stories. My father's stories, because he was only a year old, he really didn't remember. But his father ran away from Russia with his wife and his baby, ran away from the Russian army. He didn't want to be in the Russian army. I guess nobody wants, even now, to be in the Russian army. My mother had a lot of stories that her parents went to get tickets to come to America, and they said, you better take this ship that's leaving today. And unfortunately, they left the children back home, and the grandparents, my Gutalea and her husband, were babysitting. And my Bubby said, no, I won't leave the children. So she went back to the children, but her husband went on the ship. And then the war was there, and they didn't come to America for 9 years. And that was the first time my mother saw her father, was when they came.
Wow.
But they got here.
Okay. So next question. This is a great background, and thank you. Now I would like you to take out the item that you brought to talk about today.
Oh, sure. I have this wonderful old photo. And
Beautiful.
that's something. These are all my relatives.
So,
and the wonderful thing is that they're all in America. This picture was taken, are you ready? In Gardner, Massachusetts. Could you believe that? And this little boy over there, that's my father. And these are his sisters and brothers, and that's his mother and his father.
So that's like your whole family photo.
Yeah, isn't that something, that photo?
And
it hung in my Bubby and Zadie's house for a long time, and then they gave it to my father. My father gave it to me.
Well, you just answered the first 3 questions, so I'll ask you the 4th one. Do you know how old it is?
Well, this photo? More than 100.
pretty old.
Probably around 100.
Why is it special to you and our family?
Well, it's my daddy when he was a little boy, and all his, not all his siblings, because they went on to make a few more babies. There were 7 children in that family, and one little one died. And my Bubby used to tell me she was such a sweetie.
And I'm
Already
guessing
there.
that it's really special to us because it's like really old and it has like all the family.
Right. And some of these people I didn't meet, but I did meet one uncle here. And I am still in touch with one of his children.
Very nice.
Yeah, they're the Arkins, that side of the family. They were all tailors.
So is the photograph from a celebration or event?
If actually, I don't know. That's a very good question, and it's too late for me to ask. But it looks like it was a celebration of some type.
About when was this photograph taken?
It was taken in Gardner, Massachusetts, and it's not a very big Jewish community, but at that time, it was bigger than it is now. And my Zadie bought property, so he could build a house. And then he got another piece of property next to it, and he built a synagogue there.
Very
And
nice.
he donated the land, and not only he built, but he got other people to chip in, because he wasn't the richest one in town, but it was his property that he donated.
Now I would like to ask you a few questions about your life growing up. What was it like? Can you describe in more detail your childhood home, neighborhood, friends, and family?
Sure. My home was a modest one family house. We had one bathroom for the 4 of us. So, somebody was always knocking on the door. We had 2 bedrooms, so my sister and I shared a room. We had a backyard. We would lay out in the sun, and we would play ball. We had a little garden there. It was a small piece of property, but every inch was used. And we raked the leaves and raked the lawn after dinner in the spring and summer and fall. We would go rake. The winters were cold, and there was a lot of snow. It was in the snow belt in Massachusetts. So we were not far from Worcester, and we had fun with the snow. We made snow castles and everything. We were outside playing a lot. We were very close to the neighbors. We had wonderful relationships with them, and a lot of neighbors were of different ethnicities, their ethnicities, and we learned a lot from them. One neighbor would come over, she taught us how to make pizza, how to make good sauce.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. French Canadian people we had also, and they were very good with the lumber and factories. And one neighbor made corner cabinets for my parents because we had a small dining room. We were in each other's homes like they were family. It was really
It's very
beautiful.
sweet. Okay, there are more questions. So next question is, how did your parents make a living?
Oh, well, my father had a clothing store, which was really started by his father when he came to Gardner. It started out as a tailor place. My grandfather went to 3 different towns in Massachusetts. When they landed in Boston, they didn't stay there. They went to see the relatives in Concord, but they already had 2 tailors. So he moved out west. He went to Greenfield, Massachusetts, and Gardner, and one other town, I think Athol. but Gardner was where he did the biggest business. So he established a tailor place and eventually sold more, underwear, clothes, suits and stuff. And then they eventually expanded. And that's when my mother went to work with my father and grandfather. And she started out with the women's store. But my mother mostly worked elsewhere because, she took a civil service test and she worked for the draft board and was very proud that she could help America. And so she got a federal pension. And but the office for the draft board wasn't too far from the clothing store. So she'd go down and see how things were going, then she'd go back up. I don't know how she did that actually. And make all those dinners and meals, and everything was kosher. And it was not easy to get kosher food in Gardner. The butcher would come like once a week and deliver the food.
Well,
So,
speaking of kosher food, now I would like to ask you to pick a Jewish holiday and describe your memories of how you and your family celebrated it when you were a child.
well, there's a lot of them. I tell you, like Rosh Hashanah, we used to go, most of the time we spent it in Worcester, my mother's side of the family. And we would sleep over. And my Bubby cooked lots of good food. We would bring food, but mostly she cooked. And I remember the chicken soup. They never took the fat away. So the little fat bubbles on top. And she cooked with chicken feet in the soup. Oh my goodness. And we would call the relatives in Arizona too, or they would call us, not on Shabbat, not exactly on Yom Tovs, but when you could make the call. And we would line up and say, hello, how are you? I miss you, I love you. Next, we'd hand it to the person behind us because the charges were expensive. But we had wonderful times. My cousin Judy would come over, and sometimes we would all walk to shul together. It was very nice.
Very nice. When you were a teenager, did you have a bar or bat mitzvah or any other celebration like that? What was most important to you about it?
I have a bar bat mitzvah because in those days the girls didn't, or where I lived, the girls didn't. I don't think anywhere they did. Because now I'm 81 years old. So that would have, I was born 1940, it would have been 1953. Very few people. I think that eventually in New York, there were some bar bat mitzvahs in the late 50s, but not for me. When I went to Hebrew school, it was, Gloria, and we know you play the piano, so you go teach those little kids. And the boys really got the education. And I have twin cousins, a girl and a boy, who are about 12 years younger than I am. And in Gardner, when it was time for the boy, David, to have his bar mitzvah, his mother, my aunt, said to the rabbi, he's not having the bar mitzvah without his sister. So you have to do a bat mitzvah. And the rabbi was so thrown by it, was surprised, but he did. He went through with it, which is really good because he was European born. He was started out as an Orthodox rabbi, but he became flexible. So my cousin Nancy was the first bat mitzvah in Gardner. I did have one
But not
when I was 65 or so, with a group of women in my synagogue.
What traditions from your childhood are you passing down to your children and grandchildren? For example, food, songs, prayers, rituals, or any like other things.
The whole thing, the food, the songs, the prayers, the enjoyment, the participation. If you can go and be part of things and enjoy and learn. You know, there's so much to learn that I hope that my grandchildren will keep learning and finding new things and new ways to do things too. You know, like I found a way to have a bat mitzvah at age 67 years old, you know.
All right, that's very sweet. What traditions, um, oh, when you were around my age, did you have a favorite radio or television program or movie that you listened to or watched regularly? What were they, if you did?
Well, you know, I didn't do much with television. We didn't even have it. And then we got a black and white one when maybe I was around 15 or 16. And they had very few TV shows. We used to go to my grandparents, the ones who lived next door to the synagogue, on Sunday nights, and we would watch the Ed Sullivan Show with them. That was like a variety show, and the Beatles were the, you know, that was when they first came to America. And
What was in my play?
that was so much fun, Ed Sullivan. But my Bubby, she insisted the guy was Jewish, and she used to call him Ed Solomon.
Okay. Where did you go to high school, and what was your favorite subject? I think
I
I
went
know,
to
but
I went to Gardner High School in my town, and it was a wonderful high school. And I participated an awful lot in music, in the band, and then the chorus. I played the piano for the chorus, and I love being in the band. My favorite subject, maybe history. I still remember my history teacher standing up on his chair and talking about Montezuma, and he made it very exciting for us. But I did really love participating in music. I
that's
I
very
liked
nice.
I liked French too. That was nice. And I also enjoyed the newspaper that I I worked on the newspaper, and every week I would I would bring the newspaper that we gathered. I was the editor of the high school paper, and I would bring it to the Gardner News where they would print it, you know.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
isn't that nice?
So, did anyone in your family serve in the military? If so, can you tell me more? If not, it's okay.
Yeah, my uncles served in the military. Not my father. My father was the oldest in his family, and he was too old. So he did his service, his military service, in walking around and making sure that people had dark houses, you know, and they pulled their blinds, their shades down, so it was dark. You know, that's during the war, World War II. My uncles, one was in the Navy and two were in the Army. Uh, the one who was in the Navy was sent into the Pacific. The other two were um, in Europe, but thank God that they came back okay. Well, one was a writer, so he did a lot of work with that, and another one, my uncle Sammy, was a photographer, so he did a lot of work in the army with that. On my mother's side, my uncle Billy was in the Coast Guard. My uncle Bernie, no, he was probably too old. He was like my father's age. He was an artist. He taught school. So yeah, that's the military.
All right. So, what kind of work did you do? Do you do now, or
Well,
did like recently?
right now I am a retired lady, but I was a music teacher in public schools for 34 years. I went to college in Boston, BU, and got my first job in New York because the superintendent of schools in Spring Valley came to BU to interview. And I wanted to come to New York. So that was it. And then when I taught music in Spring Valley, that was middle school, I played in the community orchestra too. So
Nice.
it was really nice.
Do you have any hobbies or special interests? If so, what are they?
Well, I still am very involved with the synagogue, and I take classes there, studying the book of Daniel. I'm trying to improve my reading of Hebrew. Every once in a while, I read some Torah, which is very challenging. I like to read. I'm involved with the library here. I'm on the board of the Friends of the Crestwood Library. So, so I do that. Help promote reading in the community. I did some art for a couple of years, but right now I don't seem to. I go back to playing the piano. I try to do that
Nice.
every day. I walk with friends because I got to keep in physical shape.
Right. So now we're going to wrap up with a few general questions. What inventions have amazed you most during your lifetime and why?
What inventions, say that again?
Inventions have amazed you most during your lifetime and why, except for internet?
I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think the remote control is the greatest thing. You can
Good.
shut off the TV from your bedroom, from your bed, you know, and put it on. I couldn't believe it. One time I rigged up some sort of system so that my parents could have something like that way back, you know, connect the electric cords, and it's probably not a good thing to do.
So
That was really something. And look at this, you know, that we can be on Zoom is mind-boggling. That we can be apart, we can be safe during this whole pandemic, and we can still communicate. And I can see you, you can see me. I still can't believe it, you know, even though I've been involved with lots of meetings in these last couple of years. So that and the remote control are my favorite inventions.
very nice. What are you most thankful for?
Oh, I'm thankful for my family. And I have these incredible, beautiful grandchildren who bring me lots of joy. And they're wonderful. And I see that they're anxious to learn and to give back to their community. And it's really, it brings me a little tears, you know. And sometimes I go to see all three of them and their shows, and you know, it's wonderful.
All right, that's thank you. What advice do you have for your future generations like me?
I think you must not stop learning. I think you must try to be curious. And why do things happen? Figure it out. Don't just listen to what someone says. Think about it. Weigh the pros and cons and be curious.
Thank you so much. So that is the end of the questions. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all the information. Have a nice day.
Real pleasure. Love you, Lexi.